Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, councillors, members of the public. Thank you for your attendance. Could you remain upstanding for the council prayer? Almighty God, grant to us all needed guidance, wisdom and judgment as we face the tasks before us, and enable us now and always worthily to discharge the sacred trust placed by the people in our hands. Amen. I'd like to welcome those who are who are attending the meeting by way of live stream. We're delighted to have you join this meeting, and we also have a Zoom attendance with Councillor Lindsay Abbott. Are there any other apologies?
Councillor Pottinger.
Councillor Pottinger. Thank you.
Second that.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Put it to the vote. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, you have Councillor at this stage. Still okay. He's not a councillor yet, though, is he? So I can't call him councillor. Thank you. I'll now ask Mr. Marcus Lush to come forward, please. I, Marcus Lush, declare that I will faithfully and impartially and according to the best of my skill and judgment execute and perform in the best interests of Invercargill City District the powers and authorities and duties vested in
execute and perform in the best interests of the Invercargill City District the powers, authorities and duties vested in
me as a member of the Invercargill City Council by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002,
or imposed on me as a member of the Invercargill City Council by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002,
the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987 or any other act.
the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987 or any other act.
Have one for the camera, please. Oh, yes. I was about to melt it down. Now, public forum, nobody here wishing to... No one? Thank you. Any changes in the interest register? No, no changes. Receiving and confirming the minutes. We'll start with the minutes of the meeting of council held on the 26th of January be confirmed.
Moved, Your Worship.
I'll second those, Your Worship.
Moved and second. Any discussion? Put it to the vote. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. The minutes of the meeting of the Infrastructural Services Committee held on the 2nd of February to be received.
Alex?
Happy to move those. Second those, Your Worship.
Moved and second. Any discussion? Questions? Put it to the vote. All in favour say aye.
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 Against? Carried. The minutes of the meeting of the Performance, Policy and Partnerships Committee held on the 9th of February to be received.
Move that, Your Worship.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Not. I put it to the vote. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Minutes of the meeting of the Bluff Community Board held on the 15th of February be received.
I was actually absent at the meeting, but I could move the minutes. Read the minutes. Can I do that? Because otherwise there's no one there. I'll move that those minutes be accepted. I'll second those pro forma, Your Worship.
Councillor Lewis. Put it to the vote. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. The minutes of the meeting of the Extraordinary Performance Policy and Partnerships Committee held on the 16th of February.
Again, Your Worship, happy to move those.
Happy to second that.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Put it to the vote. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Minutes of the meeting now. Where are we here?
We're up to the receiving of this report. We've got reports to be received.
Okay, so now we'll move on to the reports being received.
Your Worship, there's one more set of minutes, I think.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
ah, yes. Got it. The minutes of the meeting of the Extraordinary Infrastructural Services Committee held on the 16th of February be received.
I'm happy to move those, Your Worship, in Councillor Pottinger's absence.
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Questions? Put it to the vote. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Report on working together, an update from Projects Governance Group. Peter Thompson is in attendance with Jane Parfitt to speak on this item.
This is actually Mr. Grundy's report in the first instance.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the governance group has had its first meeting, and this is the first project update in terms of working together. Can I say that in terms of this, the governance group has endorsed recommendations that come from each of the five working groups, and is now presenting that to Council for discussion. Pete Thompson is going to take us through the report, as I understand.
Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the Chair, just to pick up on Jeff's comment that each of the recommendations have come via the work that has come from the five work groups as part of the Working Together framework. I'll take the report as read, but perhaps if we could do a page turn and speak through each of the items as listed in the recommendations. And I'll start perhaps with the terms of reference for the Project Governance Group, Appendix A. So, three changes have been made to this terms of reference. The first is that the Deputy Mayor was added to the membership of the governance group. The second, just to note that the work group progress to the Minister is via the Department of Internal Affairs. And thirdly, that the PGG will approve the purpose and deliverables of each work group. So to just frame that out a little bit, each work group has both a purpose and a set of deliverables on which we're delivering. Those have been endorsed by the PGG. Second item, Appendix B, is the terms of reference to the external appointees. Some minor changes have been made to these terms of reference. They're listed there, but I'll just go over those. clarity. We've clarified that the external appointees will attend most meetings and workshops and will sit at the council table. And finally, that the project framework will be amended by the project governance group as the project develops. And what we mean by that is the project is set out into 4 phases, and we're currently in phase 2 at the moment. Appendix C, working on working together. Attached is Appendix C. As I mentioned previously, phase 2, identifying changes and improvements and begin the implementation of some of the deliverables from each of the work groups. When we reach the point of phase 3, this will be the continuation of changes and improvements, and it's our expectation at the moment this will begin in July and follow through to December 2021. Now the mic's too long. And finally, phase 4 will begin in January 2022 and run through to June 2022. So there's a chance that the phases will overlap. This is outlined in the report, but the appendix there is for councillors to view. Finally, the core briefs and budget estimates for working groups. We have updated all the working groups in the last week and signed off the core briefs and budgets for the following 4 groups: supporting the committee structure, the training for committee chairs and councillors, supporting the Mayor and Chief Executive, and clarifying the role of the Deputy Mayor, and developing media protocols. We are still to finalise the strategic projects work group, but this work group has been put on hold for a mid-check in March, April this year as a result of LCP consultation. Clarifying the role of the Deputy Mayor at ICC, there were some recommendations in the Thompson report that has outlined the work that's going on in this space. Good progress has been made, and discussions are still ongoing between the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor, and the Chief Executive.
Councillor Ludlow, did you have something?
No, sorry, sir. No.
Thank you.
I've already discussed the strategic projects and supporting LCP workstream. And finally, the developing media protocols and bringing the community along, Appendix D. The draft protocol has been established via the work group with input from elected members. I'm happy to take questions on that.
Thank you. Questions, councillors?
Through your worship, back on in Appendix A, for elected members on page 38. Pete, you might be able to answer this for me. At the very bottom of the page where it talks the role of the governance group, of which I'm a member, it says to provide recommendations to the Chief Executive of the Council in respect to the findings and conclusions arising out of this work group, noting that the decision-making authority rests with the Chief Executive and ultimately with Council. And so I'm unclear about what that last part of the statement means. I would have thought that the decision-making did not rest with the Chief Executive, but it actually rested with the Council in relation to this governance group.
Through the Chair, any decisions made via the PGG or elsewhere need to be ratified by Council.
Correct, but that doesn't mean the Chief Executive does it. It means Council, as in elected members' Council. If you read that in totality, it does say that the recommendations get presented to the Chief Executive, and it does say at the end the ultimate decision-making is with Council, and I don't understand the bit that says noting that the decision-making authority rests with the Chief Executive.
Through the Chair, if there's a wording change required for clarity, we can make those changes.
Sure.
Look, just from a perspective, Councillor, in regard to PGG, I think you can't have a situation where the Chief Executive may have a materially contrary view to what is coming from PGG, so it allows for that opportunity for positioning. But ultimately, it's the Council as the governors could overrule the Chief Executive, or in this case, find a pathway through. So that's, I think, Pete, in terms of the word ultimately, that effectively establishes that this is the Council that ultimately makes the decision. I wouldn't want us to get into a position where we didn't have stuff going through the Chief Executive, because there's operationally and practical reasons for some of the stuff to make sure it works. But ultimately, the Council is the one to decide. I think we should make it a little bit clearer in terms of the wording.
Yeah. So I'd like to comment further. I wasn't attempting in any shape and form to undermine the chief executive. She's part of this governance group, and decisions, as I said, recommendations do go to her as the first point of call. So happy for that clarification. Yep.
Any further discussion, questions?
Well, sorry, Your Worship, can I just seek clarification from Councillor Clark? It's really just that final line
Yep.
that you're talking about.
Sure.
Where the decision-making authority, and I think you're correct in what you're trying to say, rests ultimately with the council.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Through the chair, there are 6 recommendations for this report.
Your Worship, if no one has any further comments, I'm prepared to move the recommendations as a block.
I would like to speak to recommendation 6.
And I would like to talk to the media protocol as well.
I'm happy to second those recommendations.
Been moved and seconded, it's open for discussion.
Off you go, Norbert.
Oh, Councillor Abbott, are you hearing us loud and clear?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make a mention on the media protocols. I can see the reasoning for it because of the past events of press releases, etc. And those press releases, to quote, we did not play the ball, we played the man, just quoting that. I feel a little bit sanitised in this. That's the word that I would use, sanitised. And I just want to allude back to why we're here. I'm not in favour of preschool. I attend preschool, but I'm not in favour of it. And that's the training sessions and the other many, many little problems that we have to talk to, like conduct and how to play the ball, etc. I go because I'm a team member. But I just want to make a comment on the decisions of elected members. I will comment on that. I will comment on that from time to time when it's necessary. And it will be based on policy and it will be based on issues. But it won't be an individual character assassination. So I just wanted to make that point. I will, when the need arises, talk to matters that I feel I should.
Councillor Clark?
Yes, I've got several issues in relation to the media protocol. The first question I'd ask of Pete, seeing he's a sponsor of it, is this protocol to determine the behaviour of elected members, or is it wider, including staff?
Through the chair, the media protocols have been put together as a result of 3 or 4 recommendations that came from the Thompson report and as a result of the work that the work group for media protocols has undertaken. These media protocols relate specifically to elected members. Staff are covered by a separate piece of work that's been undertaken at the moment with regards to a communication strategy development.
Okay. My last issue is bullet point 5 on page 43. So that states elected members agree to focus on council issues and activities when speaking to the media, rather than on actions or decisions of elected members or staff. I think our statement should stop with a full stop at the end of the word media, and the remaining part, rather than actions and decisions of elected members, should be deleted. 2 rationales for that. Up at the very top of the media protocol, it recognises the right of members to speak even when they have differing opinions, to be a minority's voice, to speak against a majority decision. The code of conduct that we have within council governs inappropriate comment against elected members. So if I was to go out and talk about another member in a derogatory manner, I'd expect the code of conduct to kick in, quite rightfully so. That last bit, as Lindsay Abbott has said, rather than the actions or decisions of elected members or staff, gets to be very close to me to be a bit of a gagging order. And I don't want that to be. We have a right to be quite open and democratic about what we do, and to be a minority voice if need be. So my recommendation, we should take out that last piece and reword it.
Through the chair, the intent of the media protocol is not to inhibit anything that would be misaligned with our code of conduct in terms of communicating with the media.
I'm picking that if I was to breach that, for argument's sake, and I went out and said, we've made a majority decision and I'm not happy with that, and I want to publicly state I'm not happy about that, which could be in that second line, which is I'm criticising the decisions of elected members without mentioning them, that in its own right could be a code of conduct condition. So they could say you've actually breached a protocol that we've agreed to. So by my agreeing to that, I'm really silenced and I'm criticising any collective decisions and open to code of conduct, where if that line wasn't there, it's only my behaviour in the commenting that would be done. I think Lindsay said you play the issue, you don't play the person that's behind the issue.
Councillor Ludlow.
Thanks, Your Worship. Look, I agree with the point that Councillor Clark is making on that fifth bullet point, and agree that stopping at speaking to the media is probably an appropriate space. He is correct in that what's dealt with in that second line is effectively also covered by a code of conduct. So it's something that exists. I guess if people want to execute the right to speak publicly against a decision of council, you can speak in opposition, but what you cannot do is rubbish it. You can hold a contrary view, but you cannot ridicule the decision or the members that have made it. And I think that would be the difference and clarification that you're looking for. I know all I'm doing is applying broadcasting standards here, and the right to freedom of expression and the right to an opinion. And in the end, we all want to be in a space where we can accept that, and we are often anyway, that people have a different opinion, and that's right. I guess we need to be mindful of how we accept the democratic outcome.
Councillor Edmondson.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think these are good points that are being raised, and I guess the reason that second line is there to remind councillors that if in a situation where people have voted differently to others, that rather than speak about how other people have voted and criticising them, what you need to focus on is justifying why and how you voted the way you did. And that's how you would play the ball and not the man. And I guess that line is in there just as a reminder of that it is actually to speak to the issue and to justify your own actions and position without criticising or belittling or rubbishing somebody else's position.
Thank you. Mr. Grant.
Thank you. Your Worship, firstly, just on the point raised in regard to media training. So the purpose through the working group was that the media training, Councillor Abbott, it's offered, it's not compulsory. So on that basis, it's for councillors to take up. But it is a reflection of what was in the Thompson report in terms of this. Can I just say, Councillor Clark, I mean, we could dance around on a pin in terms of the wording here, but to be frank, I have to say this again is a reflection of behaviour rather than what the code of conduct might do. So for that reason, it's quite specific in saying, as I understand in terms of the working group, was to say that, look, if you're going to up in terms of your commentary in the media to the point of attacking your colleagues or staff, then this is a matter we would rather you reflect on before you did so. And I think at the end of the day, this is something that on behalf of the wider community is an issue that has perpetuated over the last 12 or 18 months. I'm sorry to be frank about it, but I do believe that it is quite important to be quite clear in terms of this. Will I accept the code of conduct? This is asking you to preempt being caught by the code of conduct by thinking about how you approach your comments in the market. It doesn't stop you from talking to the media. It doesn't stop you from positioning yourself in terms as an individual councillor versus the majority, but it does ask you to reflect in the way you approach people's in terms of comments. So that's the reason, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Edmondson.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just as the chair of this working group, I'd like to endorse everything that Mr. Grant has just been saying. It isn't about trying to gag people. It is about trying to have a positive effect on the reputation of council. I think we all know that the things that we say and do out in the public about council and how it operates and what it does and what we are doing ourselves can often be reflected negatively in the media, both through social media and through print media, etc. And part of this working group's mandate is to try and help us to undo some of that damage. We've been doing a lot of work to do good work as a council over the last couple of years, and we actually need to focus on the good work that we've been doing more so than the things that get under each other's skins. So yeah, I support what's written in this media protocols list. I'd also like to just mention that while these bullet points kind of give an indication of the things that we hope to do, like a no surprises policy, etc., how that looks and how we will actually do that has yet to be determined, and that's the next phase of this, and councillors will have an input into what kind of process or procedure we want to have in place to manage those things. And also just note that there's also a wider communication strategy happening for the organisation, which will help us to focus on those positive things that the council is doing, because there are a lot of great things happening out there, and it would be great if we can all focus on those things.
Thank you. Any further discussion, questions? Well, I, of course, have to make a stand for free speech. After, in my youth, I was arrested for saying a word, and it certainly was a salutary lesson to me at how quickly our freedoms can be lost. And I know this is still open for discussion and amendments, but the perception will be that it's passed, it's already passed, and we've lessened human rights, which has been fought all over the world by military regimes, and we want to do our little bit down here. We're fortunate to be in the position we are, and we should, I think, enhance that situation that we find ourselves in. I'll put it to the vote. All in favour?
Aye.
Against?
I'd like it recorded, Your Worship, that I'm opposed to Appendix D.
Likewise, please.
I'll do the same. Any further comments, questions? Put it to the vote. Oh,
Worship,
that's
so,
okay.
next item, Chair.
We'll be up to.
Next item is attendance at zones 5, 6 and the DIA consultation on Three Waters. Councillors, usually your attendance at such events would be considered something that should come out of the individual councillors' travel and training budget. The reform of Three Waters is considered to be the largest reform of local government since 1989, having the largest impact in local government since 1989. The DIA are bringing a roadshow to Wanaka on the 17th of March. As the report in front of you says, there will be an opportunity at zones 5 and 6. That agenda is not yet out, to discuss it from a regional or provincial perspective, and then to stay on. So the recommendations are on the screen in front of you.
Open for discussion, debate.
Your Worship, I'm happy to move the 3 recommendations.
I'll second those.
Moved in second, discussion, and I find it a bit difficult to comprehend. It opens the door for the whole 12 councillors to all attend this roadshow if they wish. Now, when I first became Lord Mayor here, we had to approach the mayor if you wanted to go to a conference or an event of any sort. And that meant that the councillors who wanted to go to, say, an event like this on Three Waters could do so, but within a financial limit. So you could only, because I didn't like being put into the position of being a mayor, and I could choose who could go. And so we looked at how much was in our travel budget, and it meant that every councillor could spend I think it was $1,500 on conferences. And that worked out well. And then suddenly, the amount allowed for has dramatically increased. And I know Three Waters is of importance, but so is the pandemic and other crises we're facing. So, Councillor Crackett.
Thank you, Your Worship. Respectfully, this is the most groundbreaking situation that this council has faced, certainly in my 2 terms now, where Three Waters and potentially the removal of or the centralisation of is going to remove a good third of what this council is responsible for. So even if all 12 of us did take that opportunity to be there and represent our community at the front line, then I think that is an absolute investment that this council needs to take. And yeah, that is all I've got to say on the matter. Thank you.
Councillor Soper.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to pretty much endorse what Councillor Crackett said and point out that number 2 offers the opportunity to all elected members to attend on the 17th. That seems to me very legitimate. A number of us made certain we attended because it was so crucial. The first Three Waters consultation, which was in Invercargill last year, I believe it is such an important issue that in fact we should all, if possible, attend all those consultations. It is absolutely and fundamentally the biggest change we will face as a council probably in our term. The number 3, as the actual zone conference agenda is not yet out, we don't know whether there will be a great deal of enthusiasm for attending all 3 days. Number 3 gives the ability, if councillors believe there is value when we have seen the agenda, I would suggest that the greatest value will be in attending the 17th, which is specifically the Three Waters matter. And I agree with Councillor Crackett, and I'm sure others, that that is a very legitimate reason. Every councillor around this table should take every opportunity to be au fait with the Three Waters suggestions.
Is there discussion, questions? Sorry, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, I agree with what the 2 previous councillors have said too. It is an important meeting on the 17th. We had a presentation from the DIA senior manager at the Otago Southern Forum, which was only a couple of weeks ago, so we've probably got the relevant amount of information, and we'll probably just get a repeat. I think the interesting thing for us as councillors will be several things, which we didn't get 2 weeks ago, and I suspect we won't get again. And that is, how big is the entity region? So governments decide they're going to have 5 regions. So will our region be the whole of the South Island, or will we have 2 regions within the South Island? Don't have an answer to that yet. Have asked for many months from the DIA who deals with the debt that we've got loaded on our infrastructure when the new entity takes ownership 2 or 3 years from now, and that's unanswered because debt servicing is an important issue. How will the cost of the water coming out of the entities be levied? So does that mean our rate system will still have a targeted levy for water, and the money will then go to the entity? And if that's the case, will we have no control of that? So if they push that up, will we be left accountable to our ratepayers with no ability to give any justification for the increase? And the final issue was the issue of quite a few of the councils at the Otago Southland Forum. We're going to go away and give some thought to the out clause. So in this piece of legislation, there is an in clause. All councils have activated that. They got $1 per money for doing so. But there is an out clause as well, which means that local authorities can stand alone if they want to. And it seems to me the implication for that for Invercargill may be that we would not be in, because we actually have a very good system here. And Invercargill, compared to other councils, we seem to be way ahead of the 8 ball in our infrastructure investment and management. And the other thing is that we could avoid water meters, which seem to be on the horizon with the new entity, where you pay for what you use. So I think there's a lot of unanswered questions, and maybe at that conference we'll get some answers.
Thank you. Further questions, discussion? Sorry, Councillor Crackett.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to, I guess, confirm what Councillor Clark has to say, that there are so many questions and a lot that is up in the air about this situation that as a council we do need to be at the forefront of. It's just integral that we're all there. There's a lot of assumptions or a lot of what ifs being thrown around, or it could do this or it could be water meters and that, when we're really not at that point in the negotiations yet. So there's no real point in putting fear out there into the community that we're going to be water metered at this case. So let's just rein it back a little bit, make sure that we're at the table to be there when we are negotiating, and wait to worry on this one.
Thank you. Further discussion? If not, put it to the vote. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Now we move on to the Mayor's report. It's rather short, but Penny will be making her inaugural speech in Wellington on March the 14th, was it? And I wanted to pay a tribute to her as part of this Mayor's report. I travelled extensively with Penny because she believed our future was very dependent on the overseas students. And so we travelled to Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, China, Vietnam, and for the world's fastest Indian we went to Salt Lake City. As a result of the interest we developed, the role of SIT soared, and they went from 2,482 students to 13,290 students, and I believe this was a vital contribution that was made to the development and to knocking back the plunging roles that were happening to politics and other institutes around the world, around New Zealand. Anyone else would like to speak to that?
Happy to move your report as received, Your Worship.
Second.
Moved and second, the report be received. Put it to the vote. All in favour say aye.
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 Carried.
Your Worship, there is afternoon tea. It's time to go into public excluded. Perhaps you could move into public excluded but not have the public leave, then break for afternoon tea before you come back.
Sounds like a good plan. So we just break for what, quarter of an
Yeah,
hour?
I'll move that we move into public excluded.
Thank you. For the reasons set out on the agenda, of course, Councillor.
Of course.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Put it to the vote. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried.
And now, Your Worship, you might like to invite Councillor Lush if he'd like to have a photo or be subjected to a photo for the media, and for everyone present to join you in the committee room for afternoon tea as part of the celebration of Councillor Lush's first meeting.